What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. I've grinded Season 12, done all of my placements and then some. I've learned a lot about the personality of this season between the MMR Reset, new Clash game mode, the new hero Juno and how she affects the meta, and the balance patch altogether. I've got a lot of tips and advice that I think will help you upgrade your gameplay to adapt to the new season. Now, before we get to the guide, there's a hot fix that adjusts 3 heroes. Illari's solar rifle damage goes down to 70, which is significant as that's going to change her 2-tap potential. Her headshot damage is 1.5x. 2 headshots used to do 225, which is enough to take out the new mobility class of character. Now it'll just be 210. The minimum damage goes down as well, but what difference does that make? Next is some buffs to Juno. Glide boost cooldown goes down to 6 seconds, which is quite short. Winston's leap is 5. This will make Juno very maneuverable. Compare it to Kiriko's swift step, which got nerfed to 8 seconds. The differences in those numbers are important. Moira's fade is also 6 seconds, and I think the difference between those two is the cooldown short enough to be able to use it aggressively and then have it back in time to use defensively? Because if it's not, then you kind of have to hold it until you make a defensive backpedal. Many blasters damage goes up from 7 to 8. Remember, it's super fast firing with a big burst, 12 shots per burst, in fact. So the full burst hitting does 12 more damage, in fact, if you don't miss. They giga buffed some of the support damage, and so for Juno to compete with that firepower of Lucio and Curie, I think this is a little bit required, or, you know, they could just stop making supports DPS characters. But it's a very strong role, and due to the popularity of Juno, I can see that they're just buffing her up to get her in line with the other supports, or at least to maintain the safe side of strong that they try to go for with new hero releases. And then another Juno buff is the upcoming Tracer nerf, where Pulse Pistol's damage goes down back again to 5.5. With the new mobility class of characters, while many of them have enough damage to shoot back at Tracer, Lucio for sure, very easy to hit the big projectiles into her head. When Tracer does flank a mobility class character, they're just easier to take down than before. Still probably the case, but you'll really start to feel this damage number hurt up against the other characters who have their normal giga health, particularly the tanks. And of course, just farming ult ever so bit slower. Tracer for sure won't dominate Juno as harshly now that Juno can shoot back more effectively, and Tracer does less damage to her. Let's kick it off with the MMR Reset. This was the harshest MMR Reset I've ever experienced, and I think there's a few reasons for that. A lot of players coming back to try out a new hero and a new mode added for a lot of chaos. And with that being the case, it can be hard to know who on your team you could trust as a reliable teammate from the start of the game. So to survive your placements, or even the period thereafter while you're still adjusting your rank after placements, because this is going to continue for maybe a couple weeks for it being this chaotic, I'm going to advise 2 styles of play. Whatever concept you have of a teamwork-based hero, I would only suggest you pick them and commit to them if it's going to be easy, reliable, guaranteed value for the matchup that you're in. Because otherwise, you're going to feel like those streamers that have done a Mercy unranked to GM or something, where you're giving a resource to a teammate that doesn't know how to play their position. I was kind of shocked at some of the gameplay decisions I saw in these last couple days, because my expectation of what character is going to mark what enemy or what positions they'll play or the decisions they'll make, it's been all over the place. So in order to win in those environments, the best thing that you can do is slow down. Do not overcommit your face or your life to save the plays and decisions of your teammates who don't really know what they're doing anyway. Instead, it's best to remember that the game is long. There's going to be lots of team fights, lots of opportunities, and so you don't want to be the one committing to a bad decision, because it'll put you in the passenger seat as opposed to the driving seat of your team. This is the same advice I would have given for any smurfing style guy to grind through the lower ranks where it's really chaotic and you don't know what to expect your team to do. So especially if you're a metal rank player, this goes for you. We've got a much bigger complete tank guide in the works right now. And remember, you can send replay codes of any role, any hero to the link in the description to have your gameplay included in upcoming guide videos. Now, Now, the first major lesson I want to get across applies most severely to the new Clash game mode, partially because you'll be playing it a lot. It has an increased draw rate in both quick play and competitive early in the season, but a lot of this advice goes for any game mode. Now, while contesting the objective is important and often can force the enemy into making a mistake, the best thing you can learn as a tank player is when to sack or sacrifice the objective in order to create a better team fight. The Clash game mode is perfect for this because unlike other modes, there's actually a pretty big loser's advantage. Because this is how it goes. The enemy wins a fight, caps a point. Your spawn moves back. The objective moves back, which means you get a defender's advantage on that next fight anyway. This mode often gets incredibly brawly, hectic, with bodies getting thrown on the objective, but you can be the one to set the nature of the pace that your team is fighting at by regrouping well and playing for KD and ult economy. Because remember, the enemy will never win until they reach the 5th point. Every point up to that point doesn't matter. You can give them all the points they want because with sound ult economy, you're going to be able to swing this game mode back, which is also true in other game modes as well, but particularly this one. So what I'm going to do here as Mauga is really identify where my team is setting up, spotting where my counters are, dodging them, cashing in my offense, which on this character, especially after they buffed the charge slam, is finding opportunities to land charges and then lighting something up at close range with both barrels. I just keep cycling that over and over again. There's a few tank heroes I'm going to suggest you look out for early in the season, especially high damage ones that have a big commitment whose counters normally would be disable style supports. So Zen, Ana would normally shut down a character like this, but because everyone's playing Juno, and as the devs stated, a lot of mobility characters are strong, them having lower health overall means tank heroes that deal damage have better time to kill against them. And if the enemy's not picking the greedy disable backline that counters your playstyle, you're going to also have a favorable matchup against many of the tank heroes as well, especially when you play like a Smurf. This enemy team on Busan has an objective fixation, and the problem with playing that way is me as the tank roaming around, holding my cooldowns patiently until I see an opportunity for offense, then cash them in for offense. They will slowly lose over time. As I work the perimeter from the objective and hold my cooldowns until I can land them for impact at close range, the enemy loses more and more of the map, making it easier for my teammates to play. I see far too many tank players, especially on the MMR Reset, that just try to jump in front of their team, spamming their cooldowns, saving every little thing that their team is doing. But especially when you play these more high impact, high value tanks in a MMR Reset type environment or in a Smurf type game, you kind of don't care what they do and just try to cash in elims with your abilities, and that should snowball to make it much easier for them to play. Most players are pretty decent with the entire map in front of them up a man, and you can do that by ignoring the objective and funneling the enemy by taking out the squishies on the perimeter first. That's done most easily when you remember to walk where you need to go. While there's a few tanks with short movement cooldowns that can use them to stage first, a lot of the time, you want to walk and then use your mobility to finish a target, or whatever your offense is for the given character. What you don't want to do is use your mobility to get into the fight so the enemy can use their cooldown to exit the fight. That's not an up trade. What's much better to do is walk into position first, use your weapon to create pressure, then your cooldowns to finish. On the closer range maps, especially Clash, I'm going to suggest Queen, but because Sanctuary is a very long range map, I'm going back to Mauga here, and even with the enemy counter swapping quote unquote to Diva, because I can play at the longer ranges and work the perimeter once again, I can bait the objective, call a dive on the perimeter, and then I'm going to slowly work down the squishies one by one with a much higher degree and ease of offense than the enemy Diva is going to trade against me. Ever since the buff to the self-heal passive, tanks are allowed to play off on an island more than they ever have before. So you really don't have the excuse for your team to be holding you back in any matchup ever, because you always can play deeper on the map, denying more space and cashing in your duels on your own, playing around health packs and self-healing. Diva counters Mauga in theory when she peels for him, but because we have the objective, taking fights earlier off the objective is always in our favor, because any trade stall fight is going to go to the defender who already has control of the point, because you're upticking the objective, right? That's a way you can lose a fight even, take risks, but make it worth on the objective. The offense onto his squishies was so fast, Steve D.Va's miles away to be able to help anybody, and her offensive stats aren't enough to base trade. Base trading, it's a StarCraft term, happens a lot in Overwatch 2. When both Giga tanks go at the squishies, it can come down to whose tank can get more kills faster. Well, even in this case, it was like she kind of could get none, because you don't really want to dive into a Torb. Solo cage fighting the enemy tank is always pretty nuts. The enemy's holding onto ults here that they don't even really get to execute because I'm setting the initiative on them. Another benefit of playing aggressive like this is when ults are needed to be used under duress in a defensive posture, sometimes they're easier to land because if the enemy feeds into you, you just press Q and you might win. But off the objective, it might not result in a cap, which ultimately is how the game is won. So again, even though I die here right at the end, they don't even get to touch the point because they're using ults just to survive on their side of the map. But I will show a couple examples of two teamwork style tanks that I think are very effective, the most common tanks in the game. This game on Rialto looked like it was going quite well, but then I start to notice some rotations from my support that I didn't like so much. Higher ranked players will know that even down a man, this staircase is so powerful to hold that you can set up flanks or launch offense off of it for extreme effectiveness. I was surprised to find that our BAP wanted to long rotate back to the spawn room instead of abuse the high ground, which me and Nate instinctually knew to do. So while I would have preferred to stay on D.Va against the Bastion, I end up swapping to a hero that I know lower ranked players understand how to play around a bit better in Reinhardt. Generally, players assume that Bastion counters Reinhardt, but especially after the armor change, I don't think that's the case. Bastion's damage gets the -10 new buffed armor debuff against it, and if you manage your shield, the Bastion can get choked out entirely from having any impact on the game. Now, admittedly, I do use comms here to get my team in check, but I'm playing in a group, so this is more group Q meta type stuff. But either way, I'm looking to use my body language as a tank to make it simple for my teammates to understand where I'm going at any given point, making space with the shield, fully regenerating it down, and then fully committing in when it's time to go. I don't think it's easier to play Rein in a MMR Reset smurfing type environment, but when you have a Lucio Bap Symmetra trio on your team, there's kind of no better option. Once I adapt to playing in front of my Bap, I can start to make favorable cooldown exchanges. This becomes a lot easier for a few reasons. The enemy is running Juno and Ana, whereas we have Lucio Bap, and they've got a Bastion who intends to counter me, but as long as I manage my abilities and don't die to him, our DPS are way more efficient. The enemy would have a better time trying to run their own BAP to keep the Bastion alive, but they quickly realize they have like too many bullet sponges that need help, and they can't really lock anything down. I don't actually rate Juno too highly as a character. I think she's decent, but not necessary. And I do think you need the right kind of comp to make her look impactful. And overall, my team just had a much better comp the entire game, especially when I made the adaptation in overtime. When you think you have the better team comp, regardless of how good you think your teammates are, often taking the mirror match is a pretty safe bet, because if you are misplaced in MMR, being a more reliable teammate than your opposition tank should slowly win over time, even if it is a bit difficult. I start off this game on Doomfist and quickly realize that I'm not good enough to play this character on this map, but Dorado is dive favored, so I go to D.Va instead. I wouldn't say that D.Va counters Winston necessarily. It's a pretty even matchup nowadays, but it's mainly because I have a mobile, low impact support line. Mercy and Juno aim to peel, so we're really going to be fighting off of our Ashe or Reaper offense, as opposed to maybe like tank enabling supports like Ana, who could give me nano boost. So instead, I'm going to look to peel and stabilize whenever possible. Although those supports are weak for the tank exchange, they do have good ultimates. And just like with Junker Queen, D.Va's mobility is also her offensive tool, because it's going to allow you to close the distance on enemies. So especially if they have mobility, you want to walk to take space first, primary fire to force out cooldowns, and then as they're trying to escape, then you finish them, as opposed to give their escape more value by letting them use it immediately as you target them. The enemy tank eventually tries to mirror me on D.Va, but that matchup is rather easily won by remembering one simple principle. The D.Va that goes more aggressive loses. That's because the more defensive D.Va is going to be more economical with defense matrix, which matters more now after the nerf, allowing you to respond, because if they go first, they'll have to use matrix just to survive on that position, and if they didn't already get a pick to create an advantage at that point, you can shoot them in the back, hold your position, and still have cooldowns after they rush theirs. The enemy's really trying to figure out how to vacate me, swapping to Mei on the cart, but even with it being a one team fight game, holding defensively and being more economical in the brawl finishes this game with a huge stat differential. Now, I've given you two versions of that playstyle, one that ignores the objective to go cash in frags, and another one that defends it. The considerations I'm making to choose either or depends on what map and objective type we have, what the tank matchup is, or what the rest of my team comp wants to do. There's no point to play aggressive with a backline style comp, or if the enemy's heroes are too durable for you to kill. If you spot a weakness and can cash it in, the Smurf tactics are going to go far. There you can play patient with your cooldowns for offense, or alternatively, far more defensive, playing patient with your cooldowns for exploiting a mistake, looking for something out of position, letting the enemy come to you, especially when you have positional advantage or are defending the objective. Now, the one tank playstyle I'm not going to advise you play on MMR resets or at lower ranks is dive. Not that you can't get it to work, it's just a little more effort than it's going to be worth, I think. There's a reason why whenever I look at the overbuff statistics, I am shocked at how low Winston's play rate is, because he's really been a top meta tank in Overwatch 2 for years now. Consistently one of the most reliable options at the higher tiers of play. But a thing that I noticed and I remembered having tried to do smurfing content in Overwatch 1 is that there's a lot of players that play every single team comp as if it is a brawl comp regardless of the heroes they're on. And what I mean is, two death balls looking at each other. Dive specializes in splitting up the enemy, using mobility to create man advantages onto the backline. This will be more clear when I get to the support section of this video, which is my strongest role. It's insane the things you can do with the mobile supports right now, but if those support characters play in the backline without going aggressive, you're going to get a lot of dives that kind of do nothing. Here's exactly the situation the dive comp wants. This is why it counters Zarya. I dive to the backline, see the Zen and the Kiri, get both of them to half. The Zarya's riding the cart with a long distance before it's going to reach the checkpoint, but nobody comes to help me. And because I don't sync with my duo partner Nateson, who was fighting the Sombra coming off of respawn, we just get no kills out of the offense of my dive, and my teammate supports just keep backpedaling, looking at the enemy tank, the one thing we can't kill. We do get this game into the final team fight, but I regret even trying to run this with my team, even though they're on the characters that are supposed to dive. Kiri, Juno, Moira, they kind of don't know how to do it. So what I suggest you guys do in order to win a game like this is play around where your team want to play. It kind of doesn't matter what characters they're on or what the enemy's weak to, because at the lower ranks, really you just need to out-mechanic your opposition. And as a general rule of thumb, lower rank players are much better at just peeling and hiding than they are at attacking. They don't have the dynamic movement skill set or the faith in their own mechanics even to go aggro. So to the extent that Winston will win the frontline battle, like maybe cutting off the resources of Sigma or Zarya, looking to carry the fight with Primal, it can kind of work. But as soon as the enemy goes Reinhardt, even though dive counters this, we can't win, because my team mirrors the rotation of the shield, looks at the shield, instead of going aggro at the backline. Like, this dive that I get here, even though I die, Nateson is salivating at how good this dive was. Pull the Kiri escapes, pull both Kiri cooldowns out to save the Zen and get everybody down to half, trying to shield dance. If you are the Kiri here on my team, throw a Suzu at this Discord to cleanse it off me so I can stay in, get the Discord cast off me entirely, which is going to dramatically reduce the time to kill on my face and give some burst healing from cleansing the status effect. We try to go for this again. Ultimately here, I just need to be able to dodge around the corner to get the Discord off me, but the goal here is to attack the backline while the tank is forward. We're slow on the draw. We're trying to play too skittish, and well, it's just not going to work. Like, trying to run dive with this kind of team is just not worth it. And the benefit of supports playing this way is they generally will stay alive for you because they're not looking to take risks or be proactive. The way to utilize that is to play a more offensive tank. Like, imagine I was roaming around as Junker Queen doing the same thing. I'd have a character that has much more aggressive stats on her offense, and I'd be able to get a kill, get out, and my supports would probably be safe in the backline waiting for me. If I got the chance to play this game again, I'd probably win, but Just a little bit of a disclaimer on trying to play a style that lower ranked players tend to not know even how to do, even if you try to shot call for them, which I was trying to do here. Don't get my primal off in the very last fight. The Ryan outplays me with Shatter in the bubble. Feels bad. Okay, that's enough on tank for now. We'll have a very large complete tank guide coming up discussing the role in totality, but we're going to cover the other 2 roles here today. Remember, you can send in replay codes for Season 12 in the link in the description, be featured in content from any of the 3 roles. Next, let's talk about the damage role. What characters are overperforming? Tracer has long been a meta character for ranked play in Overwatch 1 and 2, so much so that she did just get nerfed today, but due to the popularity of Juno, even though they're giving her more tools to fight back, I still think Tracer has a natural advantage. Even with less damage, Tracer is just the queen of mobility play and has the most oppressive uptime on the flank possible of any character. Most other DPS would need to all in or not fully commit, whereas Tracer can feint engages constantly with good blink management. All of the support characters' damage went up this patch, except for Illari today, so everything that can hit you puts you more at risk, but the benefit of the new Tracer with the big hitboxes is her playstyle kind of evolved to make sure that you're trying to play the backside of the fight, surprising the enemy. So what you want to do is manipulate the attention of the enemy, apply damage to the vulnerable targets when they're not looking at you, and then blink away when they are. If you do that, the base cooldown cycle of Tracer can hard carry games, nerf or not. And what you're looking to read on Tracer is moments where you can use a blink to go in aggressively, to jam your pulse pistols on the target in melee range and hopefully one-clip them. That's where you really start to get oppressive, because by the time you do that, you'll have another blink to get out or your recall to save you from the brink of death. Even though I'm barely a Tracer player, in placements on an MMR reset, performing the fundamentals of this character makes it hard to lose. But I'll give you a change up here. Same map, new game mode, Nathan as my tank. We go up against a Venture who's trying to go too aggressive, and my off-angle control helps scout and punish the Venture's flanks. In group queue, we're going up against a stack, so they all out comp switch to one of the more popular pro team comps, playing flankers around Maga. My confidence in landing sticks on a mobile character is pretty low, so I attempt to stick it onto the Maga, but he uses his shout to heal, and before we know it, after our early advantage, their new team comp starts to roll us. But I have a secret weapon. I don't know why they buffed Torbjorn. I think that's insane, because he already was incredibly reliable. I swear whatever stats they're getting off it is deflated due to the popularity of the character being kind of low. Torb is just a nuts hero, and they increased his armor health while also making mobility characters' health go down. And often, mobility characters have the damage type that's weak against armor to begin with. So think about him going up against Tracer, Sombra, Juno. Like, how do they kill him? Swapping to Torb kind of revealed a principle about Clash that I think we're going to slowly learn. Everybody wants to play mass mobility characters on this map, but it's so tiny with power positions that overlook the entire point, and I don't think there's a huge advantage to rushing to the objective. Instead, I think we're going to learn that this is a firepower style game mode type. Everyone's playing it like it's control, and there's a huge advantage to going in first, but since you get points for defending anyway, it's way, way, way easier to play a high value character that has a lot of stats but low mobility, defend your point, and play ult economy to then eventually make an advantage. There's like no reason to rush in and get early map. And this enemy team is trying to play so fast, they just play into the hands of the Torb, who does overwhelming damage to tanks. That's one of the crazy things about Torb that I think nobody understands right now. Ever since the armor change, Torb uniquely has a damage type that is very effective against armor. So if they don't have the defenses to eat his damage or punish it, like Zarya, Sigma, etc., Torb is one of the easiest ways to counter the enemy tank. And his weakness is medium to long range damage dealers. But even that, I tend to feel like I can outskill with my projectile. What I'm aiming to do with Torbjorn is hold a main angle, which is to say I see a lot of the map on some cover, using overload either to confirm kills, but usually as an escape when I'm getting overwhelmed to reposition and add even more insane amounts of health. Like, think of that. If Flankers have 225. Torb can push E and get another 100 health. I had another Torbjorn game that I thought was pretty interesting. This was the first team that I saw actually try to commit to the Lucio Juno. The double speed boost on the tank makes D.Va's mech fly in at breakneck speeds. But after the enemy blows their cooldowns to all in on a squishy, as long as we have other firepower in our team comp, we were still up trading favorably. This win wasn't so pretty, but we always felt in the game as the time to kill on the enemy's comp was simply just easier than ours. Like, think about it. A mobility comp like this, Sombra, Juno, Lucio, and maybe more characters, they all now are considered mobility class characters. So when the enemy picks multiple of them, the entire team has a shortened time to kill. And that stuff starts to matter when you weigh in just the team shooting of the entire team comp. It starts to feel so severe that the enemy tries to panic swap to their own Torbjorn. Maybe at the higher tiers with better skill, such a mass mobility comp would work if the team's able to get in, get their kill, and get out while living. But I've seen a lot of success with characters that just have either normal or higher health stats that can hang in the fight longer, and then later in the fight are kind of cleaning it up. All right, now we're going to talk about another important character that got a massive buff this patch. It's not going to be Sombra. I'm going to struggle on Sombra here. Up against the Kiri, all of my disables can get cleansed. The enemy Hanzo is torching my team, a character that I probably don't want to fight so much myself anyway. And because Sombra is kind of an all-in character to get her offense, the enemy having both Lamp and Suzu means it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to all in and kill something. So I swapped to a hero I've been trying to practice recently and finally now just got buffed into, I think, super relevance. Sojourn is going to be nuts to punish the enemy death ball peeking against us without any defenses. Sojourn's like designed to play Overwatch 2, and while she got nerfed down so much that she was pretty hard to use, this recent set of buffs has been insane. Titan spread on her primary fire makes it more effective at dealing damage anyway. The Titan spread means more pellets will hit, so you're charging rail faster for that reason. Then on top of it, headshots charge it even faster, which is another buff. So while they toned down how much one-shot killing you can do with a full rail, the speed at which that you can charge up the rail on the target you're looking at and then hit the rail immediately, you're back to being able to kind of combo kill on any given squishy with those two things, or farming the tank, setting up for the headshot. And think of it too, a character like Hanzo's health went down, so Sojourn dueling him is just easier. He can't one-shot her, and she can combo kill him kind of with a lower breakpoint. This is why those health changes are always so tricky for Blizzard to do, because add some health here or subtract it there, and all of a sudden all of the breakpoints get changed. Okay, so that's the main meta theory crafting portion of the damage roll. Alternatively, of course, the damage roll is the one where your skill expression on any given hero goes the farthest. Not because it's the correct choice necessarily, but if you can say win a duel against a Pharah as Junkrat at your given rank, who's to tell you can't play it? One of the beautiful things about an MMR reset is that you play against players that don't necessarily know the mechanics of any given hero counter, and you can pretty easily outskill them with fundamental play. Junkrat is a character I really vouch for lower ranks because he's easy to play at a base level, but does have quite a bit of skill expression if you master his kit, and can punish a lot of the popular tanks, namely a character like Reinhardt, who can go from carrying the game to kind of needing to AFK and manage himself just to survive. Another character I'm interested in watching is Genji, who is the one mobility class character that didn't have his health nerfed, which I think goes to show his performance recently. I think part of his problem is that he's not necessarily so great against other mobility characters. You're kind of looking for something that's more slow and static to go at, with more value in their gun than in their kit, because that's going to give more value to your reflect. Here at the end, I reflect the Reaper ult to save my Ana and the Illari ult. As poor as Genji might perform as you scale up the ranks, he has such a unique playstyle and plays Overwatch 2 well if the enemy doesn't know how to counter them. The mechanical outplays you could do on this character is insane, so as a MMR busting type hero, I would say he's pretty good. Always been a great pub stopper. Finally, let's talk about the support category. The star of the role right now is Juno, at least when it comes to popularity. However, even after the offensive buff, I'm not so sure what I think about this character. Her mobility's buffed, her offense is buffed, and while so many in my comments section criticize me for comparing her to Lifeweaver at her trial period, many content creators also seem to agree with that assessment, and the reason why I think we think that is because her mobility is a bit stiff. Like you reach a plateau and then parry back or in. Lifeweaver can do the same things. And while he pulls you out, Juno can put you in. But similarly, it's a little difficult to get your team to work around Hyper Ring in its most effective way. If you're in a stack, sure, speeding in your tank like we've seen in the gameplay in the guide video so far, I see the potential there. But the problem Juno has is the support category is so overkitted already. The base power of any support is insane. And especially when I show you footage of the other support heroes, what I've done on them, it's hard for me to justify that you definitely should be one-tricking Juno this season. She's just fine. As a supportive playstyle that can be mobile and can go in and out with the flow of the team fight, great. But despite how fun she feels to play, she doesn't really lack any oomph factor that is incredibly unique in a role that has lots of unique kit in it. Her ult feels like the strongest part of her kit right now, but it's only somewhat better than Mercy's ult. Not by a lot. Compare it to Kiriko, right? Where Kitsune Rush gives you cooldowns faster, move faster, and attack faster. While Juno's orbital ult heals you and damage boosts you, there's a bit of anti-synergy where the ring effect would kind of speed you out of it. So you kind of can't use the ring while you're ulting because you want to stand in it. Whereas Kitsune Rush, you can go in and out and then get another cooldown, which is insane for a long list of characters, like getting another Winston bubble, or importantly, getting another Suzu, which gives the Kiriko ult a way to interact with other ults, potentially getting 2 Suzus in a single fight, either cleansing an effect or stopping burst damage. There's lots of ways that you can stand and deliver. Overall, I just feel like it's a budget Kiri ult, which granted, maybe one of the best ults in the game, but it's got some playstyle problems. Then on top of that, there's some other interesting anomalies in this patch. The poke damage of Lucio and Kiri is now at insane levels. Here's a game where me and Nate played the Overwatch staple combo Lucio-Kiri, and we were shocked at how much range damage and spam advantage we were able to create. Just take a look at this death lane that we created with our Torbjorn teammate. We've got 3 projectile heroes coming down a lane, all of this damage quite lethal. Kiri headshot doing 120. Lucio shoots 4 huge pellets doing 22 damage each, and it can headshot, okay? So 44 per headshot, he shoots 4 of them. Like we're just shooting down a lane. Everything's getting poked down. I have no idea why they did this. It's kind of insane. And that's at range. Like it's even easier to hit at close range when you're dueling something, able to line up headshots. I think their thought process might be that Lucio-Kiri can't really easily shoot up at Juno, but the stat differential of how much damage you're going to be able to put out on these characters compared to Juno, who's got to shoot either heal or damage. These two flexibly weave between the two. Compare that to a character like Ana, who already I think is kind of hard to play, honestly. A very brittle, all-in style character. Ana at least has huge carry fight cooldowns in order to make up for that trade-off of how limited she is flexibly. Flexible supports have always been very, very good in Overwatch 2. Maybe a bigger conversation needs to be had about the headshot damage some of these supports are doing right now, but because Juno can't headshot damage, even after her damage buff, I'm a little skeptical to how it's going to compete in the role from a competitive standpoint. In this game, we had one DPS teammate that clearly was out of his depth. For reference, me and Nate have been Grandmaster support players, and our Soldier teammate gave a very typical plat player out of his depth comment that he wasn't receiving enough healing as he gets a 1 KD getting picked just about every fight. Of course, watching his gameplay, he's mismanaging all of his cooldowns and taking duels badly against players that are maybe better than he's used to playing against. But it didn't matter. We kind of like just easily win this game with brute force. And going into the final fight, we're going to talk about another character that I think you should highly consider right now. We knew the enemy Mauga had Cage, so we kind of all hard swap in order to counter him. Nate hits the disables. We kill him once, he comes back, tries to cage our tank, who defends against the damage and hides in a lamp. Baptiste, to me, is everything Juno wishes she could be. Because granted, okay, you're not as mobile, but remember what I said about Clash, right? You're gonna play a lot of Clash this season, especially at the start. Do I really need to flank around on this map? Or can I just stand here and have more stats over a long brawl interaction? Like, there actually isn't anywhere to flank. It's a very simple type of game mode. Just stand on cover and play Kovacs. This Baptiste game was one of the biggest blowouts I've ever administered to any team, aiming to maximize my positioning by hugging cover, defending myself, and multitasking on healing my Rein between applying pressure damage to either targets that are out of position or to help swing the tank fight. Bap's got 3 health bars, guys, and he can headshot in his ultimate. Now, granted, sometimes with these MMR Reset games, it's hard to know if it's just the mechanics. Bap, of course, was one of my top GM support characters, him and Kiri. So me in position, uncontested, it kind of doesn't matter anything my team does. I will just keep them alive through thick and thin, and we won't lose control of any of these fights at any given point. Using Lamp at the first sign of trouble, using Shift to burst heal critical health targets or myself, playing angles that give me a vantage point of great target selection. I think especially because you're going to play with a lot of Rein players. It's the most common tank in ranked. Bap straight up is just the best support to help Rein because he can shield the Lamp while he's low to extend his life. And Bap in general likes tanks with higher health points so that he can get the extra boost of regenerative burst when they're at half. But the real extra juice is when you know you can hit enough of your direct shots to not need either of your extra life cooldowns. While a lot of what Bap does is FPS minded, managing his teamwork abilities really extends the sustainability of everyone on your team. Built off the fundamentals of a safe position, again, similar to the turret hero Torbjorn on a safe main angle, you can keep contributing healing and damage to everything in front of you. And the better you are reading the entire game, the more you'll know when you can min-max to wait a little bit longer to almost bait in more aggression as your teammate gets low, but you can save them at the last second to swing a health exchange. I don't think the health in exchange for damage on the mobility characters is ultimately going to be better, at least not for the average player. The higher your execution is and skill, less health, more damage means you can win more or win faster potentially. And if you outskill the enemy, okay, fine. But these characters that are more forgiving with more health, more turret-y style stats, I think just are easier to play with randoms. Like, do you want the style that requires better execution from your random teammates or one that's more forgiving? Just in general, we know which one often tends to work best, and now the stats are even pushing it towards that direction even more so. Had a very similar Clash game on Throne of Anubis, but this time the enemy team was being carried by a Hanzo, whose damage might catch out a Kiri who hasn't set the pace of the peak battle against him. Like, Kiri can 2-tap him back, he can 1-tap her, but the Hanzo is not going to really 1-tap me. So I can kind of run at the duel and use my defensive cooldowns to tank through his attacks, making for a pretty easy advantage. And especially from the DPS section, I can't imagine a Sombra having a better time, or Echo, really. These characters that had their health nerfed without much of an upside, your ability to support carry went up against them because you already had the durability to survive oftentimes. Now you just need less damage to land to secure the elim. Once I was able to keep my team alive by doing my normal big healing strats, but marking the enemy DPS threat that was causing them issues, countering the team comp. Okay, I've got a couple more support secret weapon characters for you guys. Similar to Bap, a character that just holds position and puts out outrageous stats, Brig does that while being able to hold space, deny dive. Because remember, the stat differential between these mobility class characters and Brig puts her at an even bigger advantage against them. The basic cooldown cycle of Brig is to use Flail to deny a dive tank from coming in, or just disrupt any dive character as they're pathing in, disrupting their formation. Use Bash to get away to sustain yourself, and keep channeling that over and over to build up your rally. There are some cases where you can go aggressive with the Bash and Whip in order to combo kill something, but Inspire is so strong of a support ability, that's what's going to eventually carry over time. And remember, especially Clash, it's a huge bait to think this is a game mode where you have to win a fight fast. It feels like that because everyone's playing mobility characters, but it's really not. You don't have to win a fight ever. You can just keep parrying back and play ult economy, even letting them win points. Doesn't matter. All that matters is ult economy late in the game. The ticks don't start to matter until they're the last ones. So play rope-a-dope with the enemy. Another reason I like Brig is a lot of the support's damage went up but Brig's got a shield anyway, so she's not susceptible to headshot damage, which is what makes the Lucio Kiri character so strong right now. So if you've got the type of team comp where Brig would be good, in that you're less mobile and need another answer to try to make space for your more defensible comp, Brig is a pretty nuts option. There's only 2 supports that I think you can stick in a position and know that they can kind of duel in that spot. Brig and Kiri, we'll talk about her next. But as an example, on Shambali, this little room is a major access point to being able to flank the defensive backline. Fighting up the hill is naturally very advantaged for the defenders, as the tank can always hide away on the corner. But playing this spot, I can kind of solo hold against the enemy flanker DPS, boop them back, and sustain this position while healing my whole team. Brig is a character that you will always have bigger value playing the long game. It's not your job to resolve fights, it's your job to not be the one dead. Doing so will always allow for your team to have a safe regroup, which really matters a lot in Overwatch 2, more than I think people realize. We talk a lot about establishing the front line with a lot of tank focus in the game, but establishing the back line to secure regroups helps soften the advantage that snowballs typically have. I love this map, and I know where the best defending positions are. We talked about the checkpoint corner. The next one is this next choke. We don't necessarily care where the cart goes until there. So even as the enemy randomly gets pickoffs, because we play to parry back and survive, we're able to establish a fight on the cart corner in the choke where we're strong. They get so frustrated with me, they try to send the house flanking off the cart to come get me in the back line, which ends up being the biggest bait play I've ever made in my life. While I don't land the mechanical combos to kill the Tracer myself, I force recall, my Tracer can hunt her down. Rally to swing a fight after the enemy aggresses into you is so nuts. I think Brig's going to have a good Season 12 because her ability to counter these very popular mobility class characters just went up. Remember, they added an important buff to Brig where popping Rally gives you a bash reset. So you can use the bash for damage or positioning, pop Rally, and get another stun bash after that. If you use it immediately, you can get 2 stuns in your ultimate. That is freaking nuts. And that's where the health breakpoints really start to look bad for the enemy, as Brig's combos more easily become lethal. Now last, when you talk about Kiriko, swap off the Brig to Kiri in this comp because the enemy is playing all in to disable my tank. Whether it's Sombra, Mei, on a nade, whatever, Kiri is the best answer to make sure that your tank can keep brawling on the front line when they try to pump disables into them. While Kiri's burst damage did go up, keep in mind the fire rate did go down. So it's a little more expensive to try to weave in damage through your healing. I've kind of found that I'm more often shooting only 1 kunai rather than the typical 2, just to make sure that my healing stays consistent. Assuming I don't see a shot I'm more certain I can hit. But equally as well, with the body shot damage continually to rise, there's more and more characters where you can just work them down with very consistent body shots rather than taking the risk of whiffing at the crit zone. All of this makes Kiri very reliable. In this matchup, I felt it fine to play in the backline. You want to do that when you're going to see an uptrade value in just supporting your tank, like they overinvest to try to kill a very durable Ramatra. If I don't cleanse the disables, maybe he falls, but when I do, he's kind of immortal. Knowing the math of how that works out is in your favor. Diva has some plays to make up against a Ram, but ultimately in Nemesis form, he punches her out. I would say a lot of armor tanks play that way. When your support is going to help your tank win the fight, you can play in your backline. Here I make sure to keep him up while applying my supportive damage where I see an opening to do so. But alternatively, another way to play Kiri is to make use of her vertical mobility, creating crossfire angles on either flanks or high grounds, and using TP to get out. She's a Shamata after all, so she can be used to hunt squishy duels here, headshotting both DPS. Helps us win not just those eliminations, but those key power positions that those range characters want to establish. They kind of just can't shoot my team if they have to get through me first and they don't win the duel. Remember, I don't have to win it there. I can play keep away. Just damaging them and running means they don't get to really set up their ranged angles. This clip shows off what the benefit of a defensive posture can be, and we'll get some pretty insane teleport value here. As Kiri, what's best is to walk forward into a cover power position, pressure for duel, and then when you get targeted, TP back safely to your backliner. We're going to do that over and over again again here. This is the basics of what has made Kiriko a top tier Overwatch 2 support mainstay. Because if you compare to so many other supports, they don't confidently hold a position and be a threat to win a duel in the same way. Brig and Lucio kind of can, and they all got some offense, but it's not as reliable as the nonsense you can get away with as Kiri. Here I 2-tap the Juno and then escape out to regroup with my team. Wow, that's a really interesting new character they just added. Nowhere near as powerful as the first support character they added. And here for a final breakdown, we got some Kiri and Brig for you, especially on the MMR Reset. Got a lot of damage players that are kind of useless, to be honest, but you don't need them to win the game. You really don't. Use them to set you up. We walk in to take the sniper angle, punish the Ana out of position, and I'm reading my teammates through the map to try to find a safe TP spot to get to the Sombra. We collapse on a 2v1. No matter how good the DPS player is, they're going to be good enough to make a 2v1 be a win as long as you hit your shots, and the rest of the fight's just going to unravel from there. Remembering the game plan, walking in to create a pressure duel and using Suzu or TP to get out. That's the name of the game. The fire rate on the second kunai makes the follow-up shot sometimes a little hard to hit in time, but team shooting for sure with that new headshot burst damage is going to be very effective. I know the Sombra's cloaked behind them, so I'm trying to make sure not to TP to blow up her spot. I want to see her deep enough in the backline where she's going to be safe, almost guaranteed. Get there, team shoot, even though I whiff a few shots, still enough to take out the backline and also just gain a crossfire position from the back. This is what makes Kiri strong, guys. You play any position you want on the map. And I really think it's just the ignorance of the player base that makes Kiri's win rate lower than it is. Because while maybe it's a skill issue for hitting kunais, but I don't think it is. I think it's mainly that I just don't see Kiri players maximize the matchup potential you have to adapt to whatever the situation calls for. Which I think kind of makes sense as well, because if Kiri defines Overwatch 2, Brig defined Overwatch 1. And the player base was pretty weak on both of these picks, despite them having top tier meta dominance for years of time. Here, going on to the defense again, I go back to Brig, as Ana Brig set up in the back to defend is so much crowd control, healing, and disable that our backline can defend and survive no matter what our DPS do, basically. Nothing's more satisfying as Brig than playing bodyguard for an Ana and making each other unkillable. Remember that Ana nade heal effect boosts the healing of either the Ana or your healing on the teammate that has it. So you can save the Ana even more effectively when she nades herself, or burst up the tank, combo healing on them. This enemy has no idea how to break this. They can get picks on our DPS, but with our tank and support line in position, it's actually impossible for them to win. We struggled to get offense as well, but had just enough more than the enemy. A lot of Overwatch 2 fights work this way, where the map geo and the team comp is incredibly strong, and you have to invest your strategy or hit your mechanics in order to break it. But truthfully, my teammate Ana had better positioning than their Ana did, so it's not like they could just go Kiri and snipe my Ana because I was defending her too well and she was safe. Guys, that's everything for the Season 12 Complete Meta Guide. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Remember, you can send in replay codes to get reviewed on the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.